one more short story. Hello and welcome to another episode of One More Short Story with me, Chris Fulwell. Thank you for joining us for episode 7. Now, we've got a really good mixed bag of stories today. I've grouped these under the theme of love, but not as we know it. And yeah, all 3 stories take on love in a different way. I think you're going to enjoy them. I know I certainly have. We will dive straight on in with a story by Laura Cody, and the story's title is The Gold Digger and the Malignant Narcissist, a Love Story, brackets, sort of. This was back in the winter battle of 2024, I believe. It's a while now, but it's worth the wait. It was in the enemies to lovers genre, with the character of the girl next door and the item prompt being a shovel. Now, Laura's been kind enough to let me read this one. I very much enjoyed it, and I shall stop yammering away and let you enjoy. So here is The Gold Digger and the Malignant Narcissist, a Love Story, brackets, sort of, by Laura Cody. Once upon a time, a single man named Preston lived alone in a huge mansion on a quiet cul-de-sac. Preston was a successful investment manager, and he had everything a person could ever want. Everything, that is, except height. Preston wanted to be taller. So, he did some research and learned of an operation that could lengthen limbs. He shuttered his office, told his co-workers and clients he'd be working virtually for a while, and checked into the hospital. Marianne was a bright young woman. She played by the rules, worked hard, and put herself through both nursing and physical therapy school. In doing so, she amassed a soul-crushing amount of debt and lived off instant ramen for a year before grasping the simple fact that being a bright young go-getter didn't pay the bills. Cold, hard cash did. Once Preston's leg bones had been dutifully broken by the best orthopedic surgeon that money could buy, and once the lengthening rods had been inserted into the bone shafts, he was discharged home to endure the grueling process of bone regrowth. Returning home sounded good in theory. The hospital, with its endless beeps and dings, was a form of torture unfit for even the most loathsome miscreant. But in practice, it was something else altogether. 2 problems presented themselves. One was mobility. The other was pain. He made a few calls and arranged for private duty assistance. When Marianne knocked at Preston's door, fresh-faced and eager to provide home care, he told her to fuck off. He had assumed the newest addition to his payroll would be some hulking figure with broad shoulders and bulging biceps. Not a woman. Plus, he really wasn't having his best day. The pain that started in his thighs had crawled up his pelvis, contorted his hip flexors, and was slamming his balls with waves of hellfire. Undaunted by his dismissal, Marianne nudged her way into Preston's impressive abode, assuring him that her services meant the difference between sweet relief and horrific post-op complications, including, but not limited to, gruesome disfigurement and intractable pain. Inside, she scanned the surroundings and congratulated herself on landing a proper cash cow. She wasted no time in setting up shop in a small guest bedroom on the 1st floor, and immediately went to work. Endless hours of physical therapy ensued, along with little hypodermic syringes containing anticoagulants, virtual surgeon visits, and numerous adjustments to the lengthening rods. Preston proved himself to be an unappreciative patient. During strength training, he called Marianne a sadist. During range of motion exercises, a bitch. In retort, Marianne called Preston a whiny man-child and threatened a lifetime of contracture deformity if he failed to follow instructions. Preston fired Marianne a half-dozen times, then quickly rehired her when faced with the actuality of her leaving. And so it went. Marianne adjusted well to her new environment. She liked Preston's chef's kitchen with its quartz countertops, the jacuzzi tub in the upstairs bath, the Peloton in the home fitness centre. She developed a taste for the Macallan Scotch Preston kept in the library and found it provided a pleasant numbness by which she could tolerate his conversation. Like when he regaled her with tales of professional and personal conquest, or when he asked about her own work and whether she had actually aspired to mediocrity. Weeks went by. Marianne particularly relished her free time at Preston's house, and she breathed a bit freer when he was down for his daily narcotic naps. While he snored in 600 thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets, she explored his closets, searching for ghosts and dirty laundry that could prove lucrative to her future. She perused the financial statements he kept in his upper left desk drawer. She catalogued Preston's furniture and appliances, his designer suits and leather shoes, his collection of wall hangings and sculpture. She priced everything out online. Preston often woke from his naps feeling refreshed. It was at these times that honey dripped from his tongue, and he flattered Marianne with his own special brand of compliment. Once he said he liked the colour of her hair, a not-too-brassy drugstore blonde. Another time that she had the healthy appearance of someone who ate well, and this, he thought her performance as a healthcare provider was very adequate. He reached this conclusion after measuring Marianne's skill and commitment against that of the aide he'd hired years ago to assist his aged mother after her rectal prolapse, an aide whose duties consisted primarily of repeatedly pushing and squishing the poor woman's affected parts back into place as needed. This, Marianne understood, was Preston's gold standard of home care. She smiled and told Preston she was flattered by the favourable comparison. Months went by. When Preston's words rubbed Marianne the wrong way, as they sometimes did, chafing like a wet bathing suit on dry skin, she distracted herself with physical activity, depleting her energy stores until none remained to fret over petty insults. She took full advantage of Preston's home fitness centre, enjoyed long walks through the neighbourhood, and even started a small flower garden in the expansive backyard. Working the earth was therapeutic for Marianne, and the repetitive nature of the activity allowed her mind to conjure images of gossip-worthy soirees she might host one day, if all went to plan, on the estate's lush grounds. Only once, maybe twice, did she picture the back of Preston's head while assessing the heft of the 4-foot garden shovel before plunging it rather savagely into the ground. As Preston regained his strength, Marianne became increasingly determined not to allow her tenure at the home of her dreams to end, even in spite of Preston's vexing Prestonness. She traded her scrubs for clingy clothing, applied mascara and lip gloss before each therapy session. She saw to it that Preston remained dependent on her, subtly so, while understanding that any threat to Preston's perceived self-sufficiency would be an insult to his desperately protected ego. She stoked that ego, murmuring words of admiration and praise. "You are so strong, so brave." And Preston agreed wholeheartedly. The first time Preston made love to Marianne, there were no skyrockets or confetti. One of them ended up satiated, but it wasn't Marianne. Preston did not appear to notice or to care. Not then, not thereafter, not when Marianne abandoned the small first-floor bedroom behind the kitchen and moved into Preston's master suite. While thoroughly unimpressed by Preston's bedroom performance, she was extremely impressed by his bedroom, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, custom stone fireplace, and cavernous ensuite bath with separate his and hers sinks. Marianne continued to stroke his ego. "You are so tall." The wedding took place on a bluff overlooking the ocean. Everything was perfect, from the floral arrangements to the embroidered gown Marianne wore. It fit her like a glove, highlighting her snatched waist and soft curves. A year of Peloton workouts paid off nicely, though Preston had been less convinced, insisting she get cool sculpting before the ceremony. The wedding, after all, would be the great reveal for Preston's enhanced vertical stature, and he fully anticipated nothing but starry-eyed adulation from the onlookers. He could not risk a defect in his accessory. He needed Marianne to be perfect, a perfect reflection of his own perfection. Their first kiss at the altar was cold as blue granite. They honeymooned on the Amalfi Coast. Preston slid his newly elongated legs into a pair of red swim trunks and strutted up and down the beach like David Hasselhoff in Baywatch. He assessed his bride against dark-eyed bikinied Italians at the resort. He suggested she get breast implants. For a tiny moment, Marianne imagined walking off down the beach and never looking back. But there was, of course, the prenup to consider. Her old friend, the garden shovel, popped back to mind, but it was an entire ocean away, and besides, she was quite certain that the conditions of Preston's life insurance policy were incompatible with her aspirations. So Marianne simply twisted her lips into a tight smile, gazed at the azure waters, sipped her cristal, and fantasized about re-breaking Preston's legs. And they lived a barely tolerable coexistence ever after. The end. So, there we go. Two reasonably to thoroughly dislikable people in Laura's story there. I thought it was very funny. I was surprised that it only picked up 5 points in the house stage, but as I often find myself saying when looking at writing battle results, you have to embrace the madness. You just got to go with it. Sometimes stories you write that you think are okay and you're sort of happy with, you really, really well. Other times you write stories that are ticking all your boxes and you're really happy with, and they just bomb out. It happens. So I enjoyed it. Thank you, Laura. On to our next story. This is The Art of Subduction by Sam James. I didn't say seduction, I said subduction. Now, subduction is a geological process where a tectonic plate collides with and dives beneath a less dense plate. There you go. You're not just getting stories, you're getting an education. Now, Sam had this in the dating app mishap genre last year in the Spring 500 word battle. His other prompts were volcano and accidental hero, and I'm going to say that we're about to take a journey into Sam James's mind. You are going to enjoy this, and you will certainly remember it. Here is The Art of Subduction, written and narrated by the wonderful Sam James.
"There's no doubt that this young man's actions saved the town," says the police chief. The perky reporter has her mic thrust in his face, and the chief is staring square down the barrel of the cameraman's lens. Strong, decisive, a bit sexy. God damn it, how can I still be horny? I'll be next. She's already interviewed the mayor, the fire chief, and a professor from the local university. I've been waiting, swaddled in an unnecessary silver blanket, watching the interviews and trying to think of something she'll believe. Something other than, I fucked the volcano. Okay, I was on the apps, looking for a quick hookup. Maybe sanitize for TV. Looking for love. I matched with a guy who had a cute picture of him hiking. Nice arse. No, don't say that. Anyhow, we planned to meet on the south side of the mountain to avoid the main trail from town. Private, you know. Secluded. I wonder how the reporter would respond to a wink. I found the rendezvous, but nice arse was a no-show. Ghosted. Me. After a reasonable wait, I sent a quick, "Where are you?" Imagine my surprise when he immediately responded, "I'm right here. You don't recognize me?" I looked round. No one. Just me and the mountain. My phone buzzed again. Warmer. I spun on the spot. Colder. Spun again. Warmer. Still no one. I rechecked the profile picture. There was something familiar. I put my thumb over nice arse and looked at the background. Looked up. Are you the mountain? The reporter's going to think I'm balmy. Hi. I didn't know mountains dated. Let's say I've been dormant a while. So, you come here often? No, I should think of something less lame to tell the reporter. Hey, hot stuff. That's less lame? The hill rumbled, and my phone buzzed. Do you know how volcanoes are made? When tectonic plates collide, one plunges deep below the other. It's called subduction. Subduct me. I gaped at my phone, then the mountain, then back at my phone. The hillside looked the same as always, but somehow sexier. Sensuous curves, washboard slabs, peaks for days. My penis, can I say penis on TV? My downstairs twitched. My belt undid itself, completely unaided. My trousers fell to the floor. I mounted it. I'm not ashamed to say it, I mounted the mountain, and I liked it. It liked it too, as the evidence shows. I plunged deeply into the mountain. If first wink goes well, try another here to emphasize deeply. The pressure built and built until I burst. My little frothy load was answered by terrible shaking. Birds flew from trees, animals scurried in fear. I hurriedly dressed and barely made it out of the way when, well, boom, the eruption. Oh, the reporter. The professor says it was 1 in 10,000 that the volcano blew southwards away from town. And the police chief says we have you to thank. But they won't say why. What happened up there? She thrusts the mic at me.
I don't think anyone else could have written that story quite like that. There we are, Sam James, The Art of Subduction. He's a writer, a narrator, a musician, and a lover of volcanoes, apparently. Sam got himself all the way through the house stage with that story, very well deservedly, and got himself to the thrilling 32, the last 32 writers in the knockout stage out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So, well done, Sam. We look forward to seeing what other stuff you come up with. I did say it was going to be love, but not as we know it, if you remember from the beginning of this episode. So we've had The Gold Digger, a Malignant Narcissist. Sort of Love, maybe. We've had a man satisfying a volcano and saving a great many lives in the process. Our next take on love comes from Caro Robson, and it's called Prince Thaddeus Saves the Future. Caro wrote this story for the short story competition, 2,000 words, just at the end of 2025. Her prompts were heist, subway, and ranch hand. In heist, we had, as you could probably imagine, a great variety of stories. We had some very funny heists, we had some very action-oriented, intense heists, and we had a very creative take on it from Caro that I think you're going to like. In fact, I'm sure you're going to like. I'm not really a betting man, but if I was, I would say I would bet on that. Caro's read this herself, and Sam James, the volcano chap from a few moments ago, very kindly edited and sorted out the audio for Caro for uploading purposes last year. Incidentally, if you are writing for Writing Battle in any competition and you haven't done an audio version yet, I do recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be something you hire out a professional studio for, just to get yourself a microphone, use your phone. It is a lot of fun. So, our third and final story for today is Prince Thaddeus Saves the Future by Caro Robson.
Prince Thaddeus Saves the Future by Caro Robson. Once upon a time in a long ago land, the day had arrived for Prince Thaddeus to claim a bride. Tradition required he steal his future queen's heart the way a future king always did. First, he'd lead his men to a faraway castle. Then, attack it, killing whoever got in the way. Finally, he'd storm, sword first, up the stairs and into the princess's bedchamber. With her heart fearfully aflutter and his lips lustfully apucker, he'd bend down for true love's first kiss before hoisting her onto his horse to take her home and live happily ever after. Thaddeus couldn't think of anything worse. Customary or not, the whole thing felt a little rapey. And besides, he wasn't prepared in the slightest. Though the king had spent an alarming sum of gold on private tutors for swordmanship and horsemanship, the prince had never been a natural athlete. Even with all the extra help, he still fumbled the basics. Thaddeus could hardly lift a broadsword, never mind thrust one, and bounced atop a saddle like a sack of beets. Perhaps if he had engaged with his tutors the way he was expected to, things would have been different. But alas, and unbeknownst to the king, Thaddeus never completed a single lesson. Every Tuesday, he invented a new ailment to get himself out of sword fighting. Every Thursday, the riding instructor seemed content to listen to Thaddeus mumbling snippets of poetry, while both of them ignored the horses and instead groomed Blossom, his prized pet bull. Thus, though he gained none of the skills traditionally required for stealing the heart of a princess, he succeeded in spending tutoring time doing what he did all day anyway, writing amateur poems and tending to his pet. It should hardly be surprising that on this day, fated to be one of bravery, bloodshed, and boobies, Thaddeus didn't even try. Rather than lead his army to brutal battle on faraway soil, he had them stop at a pleasant lake. Here they dismounted and allowed their horses to have a lazy graze. The men lounged on the grass, eyes closed and heads turned to the heavens, murmuring appreciation as their prince stood on a large rock performing his favorite sonnets. They didn't mind. Everyone adored the eccentric king to be and agreed that it was a far better way to spend the afternoon than getting impaled or beheaded in combat. When they returned home at nightfall, their uniforms crisp and bloodless, not a single man lost, the king rejoiced. Though he'd had his doubts about his son, it seemed that all his worry was for nothing. Never before had a prince come back from stealing a princess's heart with not a single man hurt, or even dirty. For a full minute and 17 seconds, the king was riled.
Thaddeus, my boy, back from the greatest day of your life. The heist for the heart of your queen is complete. Show us your lovely wife-to-be.
The prince shook his head, mournfully turning his palms to the sky. I'm sorry, father. The castle we conquered had only a donkey in its tower. I could not husband an ass. I'm afraid I am to remain unwed. The king's jaw dropped, but before he could respond, Thaddeus's sad demeanour was replaced by his usual bright smile. Addressing the assembled guests, he said, Everyone, just because I haven't a bride doesn't mean the wedding feast should go to waste. Eat, enjoy, make merry. As the crowd cheered its approval, the prince gave a quick wave. Good night, good subjects. Afraid I can't stay. Blossom's teeth need brushing. Toodaloo. The king sighed and downed 2 goblets of wine. Allowing the prince to keep a pet bull was one of his biggest regrets. After the queen passed away, he thought that Thaddeus needed a distraction.
What better, he thought, than a big, strong beast who encouraged my son to stop moping.
But instead, Blossom had brought out Thaddeus' soft side even more. He was a man obsessed, faffing over the bovine, calling in healers at the slightest sniffle, and splurging on deluxe shampoos for his coat. Something had to be done. No prince in history had ever failed to complete the heist, and without a new queen, the king would not be able to retire. And man, did he want to step down. He had scrolls and scrolls of Sudoku waiting, and a model horse carriage to build. Unfortunately, the usual punishments simply did not work on Thaddeus. He shrugged his shoulders at being grounded, as he could just write poetry in his room. He still cried like a toddler when being beaten, making the king feel bad. He honestly enjoyed field labour, as it gave him extra time to ride on the plough, giggling furiously as Blossom pulled him along. No, the king needed something creative, and so called his head adviser to his throne room the next day.
I need a suggestion to get that boy's head straight,
he said, rubbing his temples. Not only was he annoyed and worried, but he'd drunk a further 6 goblets of wine at the not-wedding feast and ended up joining the karaoke.
He's 19, for goodness sake. I married and took over the kingdom at 16.
The adviser nodded sagely.
Forgive me, Your Highness, but it would appear that the prince needs to be reminded about the importance of tradition.
The king nodded enthusiastically, his head pounding at the up and down.
Oh,
he said, then,
yes, exactly.
Perhaps, the adviser continued,
he needs to be sent somewhere that our old ways have sadly been lost. If he sees the consequences of not respecting tradition, the utter chaos of the far future, I am confident that he will return a changed man.
Time travel? The king frowned.
I'm not so sure.
Nothing dangerous, Your Highness, the adviser said.
I have a connection at an esteemed Earl's court, circa 2025. A short while there should be enough to shock some sense into the prince. With any luck, he'll complete the heist shortly after.
The king thought longingly about finally being free to plant his own petunia garden.
Yes, he said, do it. It's time my boy stopped playing at being ranch hand, that darn bull, and started taking things seriously.
The adviser was not the type to read fine print. Contrary to expectation, Prince Thaddeus didn't poof into existence at some fancy aristocrat's estate, but instead appeared sprawled on the tiles behind the deli counter of a subway in Earl's Court tube station in modern-day London. It was 6 a.m. and the shop was locked and dark. He lay there, unconscious, his fine silk clothes unthreading and re-spooling into an ill-fitting polyester get-up. On his breast, a pinned name tag read, "Hi, I'm Thad." His nose twitched. Minutes before, he'd inhaled a fragrance of meadow grass and manure in a faraway time and place. Now the flavor was processed pastrami and his own sick. Despite his shock upon waking up, Thaddeus had but one concern. "Blossom!" he cried, scrambling upright and crashing into the glass door at the front of the shop. He bashed with frantic fists, eyes pleading at the throng of passing commuters. "Has anybody seen my beautiful bull? This is no place for my darling." The Londoners simply walked on, paying no mind. He was just another weirdo, and minding their own business was a point of national pride. Overwhelmed, Thaddeus crumpled and sat down on the floor, sobbing. By the time the shop was unlocked, he was in the fetal position, an errant pickle stuck to the vomit in his hair.
"Oh my gosh, are you all right?"
A woman wearing an outfit matching Thaddeus's kneeled next to him. Her name tag read, "Hi, I'm Nola." Thaddeus sat up and sniffed, snot and tears streaking his cheeks and chin. "I should have completed the heist. Then this never would have happened."
"Heist?"
Nola wondered if she needed to alert the authorities, but quickly decided against it. It was clear that the new guy wasn't exactly master criminal material, and she'd waited long enough for her boss to actually employ someone to help her.
"Come,"
she said, pulling out a plastic chair.
"Sit here and I'll make you a cuppa. We have an hour to prepare before customers come."
He frowned. "What is this place?" She gave him a quizzical look, her face moving from confusion to understanding in an instant.
"Ah," she winked. "Method actor. I'll play along."
She put 2 steaming cups of instant coffee on the table.
"It's a sandwich shop. Now, tell me about this heist."
Relieved to have someone to talk to, Thaddeus told Nola everything, her eyes growing wide as their coffee grew cold. Nola believed every word. It's not that she was gullible, but rather that she happened to be dating a vampire. Everyone thought she was making it up, but she knew. People who had no belief in the supernatural were the deluded ones.
"So, let me get this straight,"
she said, leaving the tomatoes unchopped and the closed sign firmly facing outwards.
"You're a prince and a poet from far away and long ago, and your father sent you to the future to see the consequences of flouting the proud tradition of murdering a woman's entire kingdom in order to claim her as a wife."
Yes, he said. "They told me heart-stealing has completely died out here, and the world is in a shambles. Father doesn't want me to bring the ruin to our time, but what I'm really worried about is my Blossom." Nola took his hand and squeezed.
"I'm sure Blossom is safe in his stable, warming his rump by his fireplace. After all, he's not the one who needs a wife, right?"
"He has a harem of 19 prize cows," Thaddeus replied. "He certainly doesn't need a 20th. A commuter banged on the glass, angrily pointing at the opening hours. Nola raised a middle finger in response. There was no way she was making sandwiches when she could be changing history.
Thaddeus,
he corrected.
"The world is screwed up," she said. "But I wonder, if someone as powerful as a prince chose love over violence, perhaps it could change everything."
"I don't understand," he said.
"Find someone who loves Blossom as much as you do," Nola said. "Don't kill her family, just smile, be nice. Take her hand and go for a walk. I promise you will not need to steal her heart. She will give it to you willingly."
Thaddeus thought of his riding instructor, of how she always greeted him and Blossom with the brightest of smiles, of how she brushed the bull's coat with the gentlest of touches, of how she flushed the prettiest of pinks when his eyes met her own mid-poem. "I know just the person," he said. Once upon a time in a land long ago, a very untraditional prince changed the course of history. When Thaddeus got home, he finally learned to ride a horse properly. And when he won the heart of his queen, he did so with poetry.
There is hope for Prince Thaddeus after all. I love the fact that at the end he does win the day, he does win the heart of his queen, but using poetry rather than more brutal, perhaps old school means. I think we have to give a round of applause for Caro for her enthusiasm with the voices too. I always love it when narrators do voices. It makes the story really engaging. Just a very, very different take on Heist and greatly enjoyable. I could see this being made into like an animated short or something. Maybe that's just me. And in terms of the Autumn Short Story 2025, Caro sailed through the house stage with that and got it to the thrilling 32. So again, very, very good work from Caro and indeed from Prince Thaddeus. That's it from us this week. Thank you for listening to One More Short Story with me, Chris Fulwell. We'll see you next time.